after agitating, especially apparently Golden Guardians. This is surprising because Golden Guardians actually just had a very solid run.
Yeah.
At the World Championship. They've made international events this year. They were actually the favorite, even though they did not win the summer split. They were arguably the favorites coming into the summer split, and there were some pretty, decent expectations at the League of Legends World Championship for them for a North American team. And it's a team that has always gotten a lot of value. They've kind of punched above their weight when it comes to spending versus performance over the years. They've developed a lot of rookies, and you would think for an NBA team this would be a relatively minor cost. So it is rather shocking given the uptick in their performance and the attending of some of the most important events where they were like top 2, top 3 in North America, that they would all of a sudden, right after being at Worlds, bow out. So let's ask Danan first to talk about Golden Guardians, because he was there for a long time, about kind of the organization and their goals. Why were they in League of Legends, Danan?
So there's kind of a broader play with the esports. It's not just League necessarily. League was probably their biggest play, everyone would argue. But the Warriors, I think, have an interest in just being more diverse than just an NBA team. They made a really big commitment. They built their own venue in San Francisco, cost about $2 billion plus over the course of the time that they put it together. And I think they wanted to branch into just entertainment generally. And obviously esports, gaming, that entire sphere has been catapulting over the last 10 years. So it was only natural that they were going to look for an end. And it just so happened that someone up high up there took notice specifically of League of Legends, the LCS, and wanted to get them excited and invested in it.
And from there, what was their attitude towards the LCS as time went on? Obviously, you're not the most recent there, but it is really shocking that they would just suddenly withdraw like this after so many years of commitment, including having nice facilities in Los Angeles, offices and everything that had been rented out, to kind of at just to immediately leave the league seems pretty shocking.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say even for me, having been there probably 18 months ago or so, and for all intents and purposes, they retained overwhelmingly what we were doing. The 2 largest acquisitions that I did in the last year and a half that I was there, they kept. Overwhelmingly, all of the staff they kept. I think I might be one of the only things they changed in the last 2 years effectively. So they were obviously intent on walking that forward. We'd made a huge commitment and built out a brand. Not only did we have the original office, but then we went and expanded, built an all new one to basically the same quality level as Chase Center in San Francisco. There was a big parallel there of them wanting to have that quality there. They were obviously excited and very invested. The confusion, of course, is shared even on my end, that they just kind of turned around after the year that they had. That being said, I can definitely say, having been there, that there were undertones of a disconnect. There was actually a pretty significant leadership change, all the way at the top, the president of the Warriors, all the way through a lot of the C-suite. Not even necessarily a bad change. I think they were just in a position where there were people who wanted to move on in their careers or even retire, and so that just happens naturally. And I think that just happened pretty close to the same time that the leadership of the esports division, in this case, as you might know, Hunter Lee, former Riot, former Yahoo, was who headed up the esports division at the Warriors for a long time. He moved on, and same thing with the COO, or I guess CEO equivalent, director of operations, Daniel Bieri, former Rioter, actually went back to Riot. So with that leadership change happening also very subsequently after my departure, the 3 senior most esports people at the Warriors were gone in probably under 8 months. And so this is, I assume, only a natural pivot they've made because of those departures.
By the way, can you give us a ballpark figure? During the years when Golden Guardians existed, if people don't know, they're a team that came in for franchising, so 2018 onwards, right? If you look at the rosters and someone's just an expert about League of Legends, the assumption is most years the team was probably operating, if we assume 10 teams, on a budget of, let's say, 7th to 10th. It's assumed that you didn't ever have the top roster, and you couldn't, except maybe the odd season where you just slightly you couldn't really go after the big names. Would you say that's accurate? Was it a team that was sort of min-maxing?
Yeah, of course. I would say so. There was only 1 year prior to me, because that's when they joined the league. That year was a little expensive. They were the last team in the franchise.
The year, maybe they paid a bit that year, right? There was a few players on that one, I think.
Surprisingly, no. I would say my entire tenure, we were probably bottom 3, bottom 4 in spending, but obviously punching above that, making playoffs pretty much. I think we only missed one set of like 9 splits or something. I think the only times they were ever in the top maybe 5 in spend was the very first year before I was there, and then this last year where they were just seeing through like the second and third year versions of the contracts that kind of had left on my departure.
Okay. I've just got a couple of notes to say based on like the big preamble he just gave there. 2 obvious things come to mind for me. One is when he then references the people who left Golden Guardians and that they worked with Riot. This is one of the areas where this entire thing just looks like a sham to me, Richard. It's like, so wait a minute, Riot Games owns everything essentially, and then they put their own people, they did this at EG as well, they put their, G2, they put their own people out into the world like double agents, and then even those people can't work with them and collaborate and make a great league. Like, what are we doing already in that one? And then the other one, I just throw this out there, is it actually makes my skin crawl. Not now when everyone knows it goes busted, Danan, but when they announce these buildings you're talking about, when they say, we're just building a new $50 million compound, that's just some cargo cult shit, mate. You're a company that loses money and needs to take in tens of, I'm not talking about you specifically, every LCS team. Every LCS dog needs to take in tens of millions every year. But rather than, take the millions you've got now and invest them in things like better scouting, better play. No, let's just build a building and make it look like a sports facility and go, step 4, question mark, question mark, question mark. Step 6, aren't we the Dallas Cowboys now? It's like, no. The answer is no. So just 2 little things. They're not a disadvantage. One, I am just sick of hearing this story of this diaspora of Riot geniuses that go out there into all these companies, fuck them up completely, and then half of them fucking go back to Riot. Because if you don't get it, fans, what would working at Riot Games do that would suddenly make you qualified to run a massive sports team? Like, I don't even see the connect myself. And then also the other one, like I say, is the amount of these, like, obviously the worst of the people, the 100 thieves of the world. I don't get how you can go 1 year, I'm building a $50 million facility, next year, like, please, can I have money, government? I don't have any money for anything. Like, you've mismanaged then, haven't you, mate? Like that. And that scenario, by the way, COVID / the LCS didn't fuck you, mate. You were basically on the fucking on the tightrope going, whoa, whoa, and then a slight breeze came along and knocked you off, mate. You make it sound like you were walking along a bridge and someone threw you off. Like, no, you were doing this the whole time. Whoa, like you were never fucking stable. So there's cards on the table for me. Not impressed with the LCS in general. So let's get into it.
Yeah, just on that point, I mean, like, I don't know how really relevant it is to the sort of direction we're going to go in with the discussion. But I will add, I mean, obviously, one of the things that kind of I raised it at the time, it's like all of these people coming into the league, they seem to have some sort of ex-Riot that comes in an executive position or somebody that's like adjacent to that like group. And I've talked to a lot of people. I mean, League of Legends less these days, if we're being honest. But back then when it was sort of happening, and Hunter Lee's a guy that I've been very publicly critical of on a number of occasions. He's another one of these kind of examples of people just continually failing upwards for me. I'm really trying to think of something he's done that's been a success. Like, you have to surely get a W before you get the keys to like a big org, but apparently not. But anyway, but the thing that I raised at the time was like, those rioters basically intimate to the orgs by having me here. I can get you in with I've got Mark Merrill on my mobile phone. So if you want to sign a player and it's a problem, I know who to call. Or if you've got a sponsor and it's a little bit iffy, I know the workaround. And so there was almost like a double grift, no pun intended for double lift, but a double grift going on with the Riot staff that as they were going into these orgs, because they weren't competent anyway. I don't think Riot really put a lot of stock in these people. I don't think it was like Invasion of the Body Snatchers per se, although it might have been. I don't think it was part of a broader Riot strategy. But I think just the connection to Riot essentially made these people hireable for jobs they weren't really capable of doing. And I think that's been a kind of compounded problem within the LCS, that unfortunately a lot of people have been hired on name value and connection and not competence.
Well, it
Yeah,
has to be
perhaps.
said, too, that a lot of these people were recommended by Riot itself, right? Because when you get these, what happens is when you get these, sports teams or non-endemic entities, they need ways to fill out their staff. And Riot themselves would then push these people into those companies to have their tendrils in there, like you're saying, Richard. And obviously, if you're Riot, you're not going to be recommending people from other publishers, other, ESL or other people who have been in esports for a long time. It was never a balanced approach to candidates they were taking. They were saying, hey, this person knows our system, even if they were relatively low level within the Riot ecosystem, because we are not talking like it would be a massive promotion, to go from some of the lower level LCS administrative positions into, working directly for the Golden State Warriors and to oversee one of these teams. And I think that's been the problem, is that there was never really a search because Riot was busy telling their new partners exactly who to hire. And honestly, like not presenting a complete picture of the industry, because in true Riot fashion, what they do is they say, we are the most competent. Don't hire somebody from one of these other companies, even if somebody has years and years and years more esports experience, because they may be adversarial to Riot, or they may know too much, honestly, because if one of these people is well versed in the way that other developer operations work, they may push back on Riot. But frankly, a lot of these people that come from Riot, their only esports job it's only ever been Riot. So they're clueless when it comes to how the broader ecosystem. And so it becomes much less of a threat to Riot in that instance.
Yeah, and I'll also say I put actually very little blame typically on leadership that is coming from this circumstance. I'd say the same thing about like Greg Kim, who came from Riot, went to EG, and then ultimately CLG, and I think maybe still with MSG now. I think he's stuck on over that direction. Yeah. Funny enough, when I look at it, I actually blame the groups that actually had the capital, the ones that had the option to just not hire these people if that didn't align. And there's obviously just a big fundamental flaw with how they're going about that decision making. Obviously, Monte, you called that out, that Riot kind of like pushes, nudges, and points. But I think that's kind of normal and necessary, that you're going to pull inevitably, not even necessarily Rioters, just already established esports people. I think the thing that confuses me is how each time these people ended up always the senior most person at the company in the position, actively operating day to day at a high level. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a great idea if you're going to go join a sports league, to take someone from the league to help massage and manage that relationship. That's just totally normal in any facet of business that you ever get into. It just ended up really awkward that those were also the key decision makers at the highest possible level every single time. Not any individual person, literally uniformly across the industry we saw this. And that's
also
probably
to your point. Like this also, one of the people who was at GG that you mentioned earlier literally went back to Riot. It feels like one of those scenarios where it's like the lobbyists just bouncing back and forth between government jobs and lobbying, right? The door is open, just come back, right? And, if you want to maintain that bridge, you cannot be adversarial to Riot. Mm-hmm. So it's a conflict of interest.
Anyway, it's one of the reasons I also brought it up, Monte, is because that's the problem. You'd already ask questions if it was Riot's own people got seeded into the companies and then they run it. That already has its own questions to ask. But the fact, as you say, that they go back, that's even worse, because as you said, Monte, unless the person truly believed, and I don't think that many people believe, that like LCS was a thing forever, they have to cynically, assuming that a lot of people like us who are like moral, like hardliners, they're going to think things like, now, should I fuck with Riot on this like seemingly minor day-to-day issue? Or maybe do I want to work again in 4 years? You know what I mean? That is the question. Even if not implicitly, it's in the background, isn't it? It's an elephant in the room that is exerting its influence. By the way, a couple of things I want to bring up here is, on this particular topic, I haven't reached out to any sources. I don't know any behind the scenes of these teams leaving it. So this is more of a Richard topic. So as a pure outsider speculating, one of the immediate topics I ask myself is this just, because Golden Guardians is the most important one on to me. If you know the EG story, as we've alluded to, that's been a shit show from beginning to end and in a million different ways. And it's not really a surprise to me that company would have problems in every regard. The Golden Guardian's a bit more shocking because as I've set up, I actually did see it as a team that actually I thought they were pretty shrewd with their spending over the years. People don't know Monte knows this. I've credited in error a million times over. Look how many bloody rosters the guy built that time and time again. The joke is he just builds the roster that the top team takes the players from, and then they get to win the LCS with those players. He's done a great job. And as you said, Danan, they were always in the playoffs. They were always, if they on the years they didn't go to Worlds, they were that far away, even though I was saying some years they might have had the 8th best budget. So to be in position to come fourth or to actually make Worlds is ridiculous. So that's all good. But the reason I bring up the Golden Guardian one specifically is because of the backing from the Golden State Warriors people. That makes me ask one of two scenarios has to be the case. There's either one, you really did completely paint yourself financially into a corner that when the esports winter hit, you just had no runway. You have to sell now, essentially, or you're fucked. Because if people don't know, if you heard when I reported the rough figures of the LCS, even now when people make budget teams, you're still going to, like, at best, lose a little bit of money. And if you know how teams operated last year, almost every team would be losing $1 million or more a year. Obviously, big teams like Team Liquid were losing many millions with the superstar players. So in that scenario, what I want people to think about is if they didn't have literally like the wolf at the door, you got to pay me now or close up. If it was actually the choice of Golden State Warriors people to leave with Golden Guardians and take the 6 million, that's actually a really alarming sign for the future as an omen for the LCS, in my opinion. Because two things. One, if you now with the budget rosters could have run on, like, you know, you just lose a few 100,000 and you get like the X million to offset it to make it just a few 100,000 with the costs. Logically, if you thought in 2 years this could be worth 20 mil again, you don't sell for 6 now. That doesn't make any sense. You tank it for the year and you wait for, it's like the old Bitcoin. You wait for it to go back up again, don't you? You hold it. So the implication for me is they either couldn't do that or they don't believe in the LCS. Because think about this. This isn't just Billy Nobody from the tech space who bought an esports spot. This is a fucking NBA franchise. If anyone should understand the concept that if this ever works, it could exponentially grow in value and be worth billions in 10 years, literally 10 years. If you think about how the NFL scaled in the 90s and the 2000s, that just, to me, either implies they didn't have the money or they just don't believe in the premise.
I do have a little bit of insight into that, but I'll let Danan go first for sure. Yeah. I want to hear your thoughts.
My point's pretty quick on this one. I actually think if I had to draw like a really hard, if you made me stand on exactly what I think happened, I think really all that happened is Valorant. That's like an unforeseen circumstance to the whole situation that obviously Riot has already shown like a completely alternative structure for how they're operating. And I would guess sometime in the last 12 to 18 months, Riot started communicating to the teams, maybe not even directly, not even saying it outright, just like inadvertently letting things out that we like this, we think this is like the future of esports and how games should be handling it, how developers should be handling it. And if that gets to any of the LCS owners, which unsurprising, there's obviously a shared pool of these people.
Yes.
If that gets communicated to them, that's gonna signal some worry, especially for groups like the Warriors. You have to ask why they got in. They got in presumably because they wanted an actual, real, permanent partnership that's going to last, because they want to be there until it's worth hundreds of millions, billions of dollars.
I especially asked you if you'd min-max, because this isn't a team that came in and just dropped 50 mil and then had no money and had to leave. Like they were already doing a long-term play. The idea was to be here in 20 years when it gets big, right?
When Riot starts leaking the idea, intentionally or unintentionally, that they want to change the structure, the fundamental reason you got into the space and why you were committing so much, that's going to make you pause. Now, more clearly, the structure that they've been talking about that we've already seen with Valorant, and assuming they're going to mirror it to LCS, that's been the vague assumption everyone's had now.
Yes.
If that's going to be the case, if you're the Warriors, I'm assuming you just immediately say, well, then why be reasonable? Why
if someone doesn't know Valorant, whereas LCS, you buy a slot. Valorant, you agree to become a partner and they pay you to be in the league.
Riot picks you. It's just Riot
picks.
It's exclusively Riot picks you. Like to the point where Riot picked nobody most recently when there was some complication with the Ascension ownership slot. Because Riot just gets to pick you, if you're the Warriors, if I'm the Warriors, and I was the Warriors, I would probably just say, hey, let's just like get what we can out of here now, and then like eventually if this does work, if what we think is going to happen in 10 years does, and these spots are worth millions and millions, we can just go back and ask to be let back in. And we're the Warriors. In the context of who's in the leagues right now, the Warriors are still an incredibly attractive franchise partner. So you can just div out now and just walk back in whenever you want to. Why would you spend all this time being stressed, being really frugal, and being consistent when you can just watch on the sidelines and walk in whenever?
So when I was covering this, obviously, I think it's pretty obvious now that EG's an open book to me with all the reporting I've done, and with each subsequent report, I would find out more and more and more about EG. And I wish I could say it's the end of the reporting about EG, but it's not. The EG files are thick.
This can run, baby. This can run.
Yeah, exactly, dude. We got 9 seasons in this one, right? But Golden Guardians, it was a little bit harder to poke around the edges of that aspect of the story, and there were some details I didn't get over the line. But I think what I'm confident saying on a podcast is Golden Guardians have wanted to sell for a while. They were in the process of finding a buyer last year, I think, or seeking out a buyer. They had a buyer, I'm told, prior to exiting the league, but for whatever reason, it was going to take a little bit longer, or there was still some back and forth going on. And so, for expediency's sake, the Riot offer is a lot cleaner in terms of you leave, you get some cash back essentially for it. Yeah, I don't think it's one lump sum. I think it's staggered payments, I heard, but don't quote me on that. And then ultimately they were given the choice of sort of like wrangling out this acquisition or just taking the easy option. And again, the phrase I heard was lost confidence, that the Guardians executive board have totally lost confidence in the esports model as it's been sold to them. And you're going to find a lot of sports franchises and VC groups that came in the supposed, golden era of esports feel that way because they've been sold a bill of goods. These are the people that bought into the Overwatch League. These are the people that thought, well, if we get a franchise slot, it's going to hold some sort of nominal value. And, in Activision Blizzard's case, Bobby Kotick's friends were all told, yeah, the next set of idiots that come in, we're going to sell them 30 million. Yes. Think about it. They literally set it up like a fucking Ponzi scheme over there. LCS, obviously.
Sell tournaments yourself. You just get 4 people in your area to be under you, and then they get 4 of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then, and have some free Tupperware, exactly. Robert Kraft. So it was these people have been burnt, as far as they're concerned, and again, I was told they had no confidence, and then to Danan's point, maybe it might be 10 years before they think about coming back. They just want a hard exit on all the esports activities across the board because as far as they're concerned, maybe it is to do with the Valorant model and these newer models that we're going to see. But the franchise model has been tried and it has failed, and it has cost a lot of people a lot of money and a lot of wasted time. And so, as I put in my report, it's not just Golden Guardians that are griping about this. They were one of the loudest people banging the drum to want to get out at the first opportunity, even after having such a great season. And Riot, this is the key thing to remember about the chronology. It wasn't that Riot came to the teams and said, hey guys, we're going to cut the league. Who wants out? Who wants to get some of their mills back? There's room for 2. They didn't just snap a pool cue, tryouts. It wasn't that. It was after they took a temperature check and were getting feedback from all the owners who would exit if possible, who's got confidence in the league.
Everyone could have exited.
50% of the league said, well, we would take that like tomorrow. And so what they had to do, they had to prioritize who gets it. Golden Guardians haven't already raised it, e.g. in the process of liquidation, essentially. So you prioritize them. Plus, it means you don't have to finish that investigation about the Danny stuff. We just don't have to do it now. We don't have to open that Pandora's box, right? Super convenient. And so anyway, that's what happened. But then because of the contract, they have to offer the same amount, irrespective of the level of franchise, success of the franchise, but they also have to make the offer. What they were being told with that offer was essentially like, hold the line. We're going to turn it round. Let's see what an 8-team league does. Now, it wasn't just two people wanted out and everyone else said, whew, we got rid of them Golden Guardians and EG. Now the league's going to be a success. Like, there was a lot of wrangling done, and it came together quite quickly, which is how the players got fucked over in all of this. So, I mean, to put a pin in the Golden Guardians point, I think they are representative of a lot of sports franchises now. That they're just like, wow, we paid 10 mil for what? And this is how it ends. It's better to just rip the Band-Aid and get the fuck out now, frankly. And I think we'll see more of that coming across multiple titles.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.